Hello students, Miss Lockhart here. Let's do some printmaking. You will need your styrofoam printing plate from last week, the block printing ink, your brayer, a plastic to-go knife or fork, and then yes, your styrofoam from last week. You want to make sure that the indentions have been pressed down quite hard so that you can see it on the back, but it doesn't go all the way through, but you can still see the texture of your grooves and your lines on the back. Now I'll be using 4 different colors of construction paper and using 2 colors on one square so that there's extra color. You'll also need scissors. And then you'll see the cardboard I'll be working on top of. Make sure you have a nice safe surface where you can be a little messy. So I just stacked up all 4 pieces of paper together because I am going to try to cut them to be 6 by 6 inches, just like the styrofoam. Notice I took off the piece of paper I traced on top of. It is no longer necessary. So line your styrofoam up when all the papers are stacked together on the bottom right corner, or whichever corner all the papers are stacked together on, and then trace it. And there you have your outline that you can cut to get the exact right sized paper, 6 by 6 inches. Go ahead and cut all 4 pieces at once, and just make sure you keep them lined up. Okay, here are 4 different colors of paper that are 6 by 6 inches. Now I'm going to combine some of these colors together so that my background paper is really nice and colorful. You'll need a glue stick, or if you don't have that, you can use any glue, scissors. Now you can design this extra colorful paper however you want in your background. Let's say you just want a smaller square or a triangle on the inside. You can do that. Definitely add a second color of paper. Now you'll see I folded mine diagonally so that I now have 2 triangles. So I will be gluing this triangle that is half the paper size with a diagonal line down here. But like I was saying, you can cut out any other shape you want to add more color to your background. Now make sure you cover all the space with your glue and carefully line it back up so that it fits nicely on your background paper. Okay, I like the design of that, so I'll be doing the same thing to my other piece of paper with these 2 colors, green and red. You can use the same design you used if it was different, or you can change it. Just make sure you use 2 different colors so it's nice and colorful. So I'm going to try to line this up nicely so that it doesn't come off of the background paper too much. I want to keep it the right size, 6 by 6 inches. And now that my papers are ready for the printing, I am going to show you what you're going to use. You will need your styrofoam, make sure those indentions are nice and deep, your ink, and your plastic knife or fork. Along with that, brayer. The brayer is the round thing that we're going to use to spread the ink around evenly. So you'll have a small container of ink if you're virtual. If you're at school, I'll have the ink set out for you. But let's get everything ready. So right now, you're going to need to set your background papers aside so they don't get too much ink, or any ink on them rather, and put mine up above my styrofoam printing plate. Now use that little plastic knife to scoop out your ink. You can go ahead and scoop out kind of a lot. You can see here on my little knife, it's a lot. You're gonna need a lot so you can cover up the whole plate. Now, take your brayer and notice how it rolls. What we're gonna do is we're gonna roll this ink down, and we wanna spread it out all over our brayer. So we want the whole brayer to be full of ink. Now, I'm gonna stop talking so you can listen to the noise that you wanna hear, and that's how you know the brayer has enough ink. It's a sticky sound. It sounds kind of sticky. I'll try to turn it up for you in just a moment. But the goal is to cover the brayer evenly with ink. So I go up and down. Do you see what it looks like here? It looks sticky and those lines are even. So the texture you saw on the brayer looked quite even, which is good because you don't want more ink on one side than the other. So look to see if it's even. Not quite. Let me even it out. So you go up and down with the brayer and then left to right. Try to get it as even as possible. And then when you see that you have lots of ink and the texture of the ink is even on your brayer, you can go ahead and apply it to your styrofoam. But don't worry too much. As long as you spread it out, your ink on your work surface, like your cardboard or whatever poster board you're working on top of, spread out that ink nice and even so that your brayer has ink all over it, so that it can put it on your styrofoam nice and evenly. Now notice here where you press down, your drawing that you transferred over that's been pressed down is the negative space. Isn't that fun? So it actually doesn't have any ink on it because it's concave, which means the ink can't reach that layer of the styrofoam. So now you may understand what we will see on our background paper. We will see the black, which will look like the positive space of your drawing. Now, before we flip it over onto the paper, onto our background, you need a scratch piece of paper that is clean. I'm using a piece of computer paper, so that way we can put our background paper on a nice clean surface, because this ink is a little messy and you don't want to mess up the front. So flip it over and do your best to line it up with the paper underneath, and then smooth it down and press down kind of hard with the bottom of your fist here. So the smooth side of your fist, or you can just use your fingers too if you press down nice and hard, so that we can push the ink onto the paper all around on every spot. And when you feel like you've pressed it down everywhere, you can peel off your paper, and look at that, there's your print. Now next time I am going to use more ink. Do you see where it's a little faded? It kind of has a fun effect, a fun texture, makes it look like a print when it's faded like that. But next time I am going to use extra ink, and I think I'm going to redo that one. So now I'm going to add more ink to my styrofoam printing plate, and this time I have a good feel for how much more I need to add. I actually need to add some from my container. So if you do, grab some more, and let's really fill up our brayer this time. Or maybe yours was full the first time and your print was nice and solid. Okay, so spread the ink up and down, and then left to right, and then up and down again. And I just checked it to see if it was evenly spread out. The texture would look the same. And now I'm going to apply it. Make sure you cover the whole styrofoam. Your fingers are going to get a little bit messy. You can wear gloves, but you do need to hold your styrofoam down whenever you are spreading out the ink. Otherwise, the styrofoam moves all around and you can't get a hold of it. So keep spreading out the ink until you can see that the sticky texture is even on the styrofoam. And just keep adding as much as you want. Now what you don't want to happen is you don't want to add so much ink to where it fills in the crevices. If that's the case, then you might have to rinse out your brayer. Your styrofoam. You're going to have to rinse it out if it has ink inside the negative space, inside the grooves, and try again. press down a little harder on the actual styrofoam transfer. So I'm ready to flip it over onto my background. I'm going to press it down with my hands all around with my fist. But I'm not banging it. I'm just sliding my fist around the back. Now, if this does get on your fingers, that's okay because it'll wash off really easily. It won't wash off so easily if it's on fabric, but it will. It's just you need to use more soap, but it'll come right off your hands. Now look at that. The print is much darker. I like that a lot more. So I'm definitely going to redo my first one, which you can too. You can always make the background again and try again. We're only going to be doing 2 prints. If you have extra paper and extra ink, you can definitely do more though. All right, so I have waited a whole day and now my ink is dry. So I'm going to glue it onto a nice background paper that'll act as a border, kind of framing the piece of art. So you can choose any color construction paper you want. And this way we can just make our prints nicely displayed on a background paper to create a border. Now you can see how I redid my first print. I did it on the other side, so I'm putting glue down on the first print that I tried that wasn't dark enough. But the other side, you'll see, looks much better. So that's fine. And oops, I got a little bit of that ink on my background paper, so I'm going to flip it around and try to cover up where I made a little bit of a mess there. Okay. So I'll press that down, let it dry, and you can see it's a nice border. I do want to cut off the bottom so that it's nice and even. But I'm going to let it dry for a minute and go ahead and glue my next one down. So now you have 2 prints that are inspired by pop art with beautiful colors. I think I like this one more because it's different. So I chose an orange piece of paper for my border. I'm going to cover the whole back of my print so that it can stick nicely to my background paper. Okay, and you want to make the sides as even as possible. And I'll show you a little trick to cut the bottom part because it's much longer at the bottom. So we can try to make that nice and even. And if your edges and corners aren't glued, please add more glue so that it's secure. You don't want it to fall off and get ruined because you definitely don't want water to touch these. The ink will spread if water touches it. Okay, so here's a little trick to cut the bottom to be even. You can fold it. So I'm going to flip, let's see. I'm going to flip my paper over and then fold the bottom and try to see if it's the same width as the other side of the border, which it is pretty close. So I'm going to go ahead and make this a fold line. And you can see I'm reusing some paper, recycling it. Okay, now that looks about right. I'm going to do it to this paper too, fold the bottom so that the width of the bottom is the same or close to the same as the width around the print. So it's a nice, even, symmetrical frame. And there we have our 2 beautiful pop art prints. Let me just cut this off here. So it's finished. You can sign your name on the bottom of the borders. You can display these together side by side, or you can give them away individually, or just have them individually. That's 2 pieces of art. I hope you had fun, everybody. I cannot wait to see how your prints turned out. Great job.